we've got a bit of a packed agenda for everyone today. We're going to start off doing, I think the sort of the word that's been on everyone's lips over the last 18 months. A bit of a COVID update, a reflection on where we are now, the distance we've sort of travelled, a few updates from us. We're going to look through the quarterly returns that are coming out and have some sort of conversations about what that looks like, how we're using that information, things like that. We've then got some updates in terms of placement activity data, so numbers of placements and the sort of composition of those that we've been making, and then some conversations about sufficiency strategies, which I think has been a fair while in the works, and I know that I've had conversations with a lot of you about when those will be published, so hopefully some positive updates about that today. Later in the morning, we'll be joined by Fiona Story from the Children in Care, from the Corporate Parenting Service, to talk to us about the Stepping Out programme for our children and young people in care. And then for all of our providers who are on our framework already, that will, you're welcome to drop out of the call then, and we'll have our colleague from procurement coming along to join us, giving a bit of an update for those to whom it's relevant as to how to join the framework. And yeah, we'll touch on that a little bit more later. So in terms of sort of COVID-19, I think since we last spoke, there's been sort of quite a lot of change, really. I think when we look back to September last year, I don't think any of us were foreseeing the sort of the challenges that we saw happening towards the end of sort of December 2020 and then into the start of this year, and the return back into, I think, lockdown 3, I think. I wanted to, on behalf of commissioning, I wanted to thank your support workers. I think that the response that we've seen from our providers has continued to be really, really positive. I think we've continued to see a really child-focused service, and I think that the way that, and I know that this won't be applicable to all, so this next part was managed on sort of a geographical basis, but we work with providers locally in the COVID vaccination priority programme, and I'm sure for those of you who work a little bit further afield, you'll have had similar conversations with your sort of host local authorities. But yeah, really, really positive sort of working together and coming together. Just a reminder, really, that we continue to see COVID numbers in a more challenging position than one would like, and just a reminder that we continue to have information available on our website in terms of frequently asked questions, access to information provided by Public Health and Public Health England. And that if there are any sort of positive COVID incidences, we just ask you to continue to utilise our incident reporting form. And that's just so that we can make sure that we're working with yourselves, with Public Health, with social care colleagues, just to make sure that everyone's safe and okay, and that we can work with you to manage any sort of business continuity concerns that might arise. I think that's pretty much everything from and so I think from our perspective, we're now moving forwards into a sort of back into a recovery position, which I think again is kind of where we were in September when we last came together. So we sort of viewed our approaches, if you will, in response to COVID in terms of sort of almost response and recovery. And so that response happening when that immediate need and that sort of more heightened challenge is present, and then now looking at how we can work together with yourselves, with as a market and as our strategic providers to identify how we can, move forward, continue to ensure good quality local provision is available for our young people. And I suppose really as the roadmap out of lockdown lifts restrictions, what that means for us in terms of resuming contract monitoring and quality assurance visits and undertaking those on a more face-to-face basis. I know that a lot of visits over the previous sort of 12 months were conducted in a virtual format, and how we can start to resume sort of quote unquote business as usual within the context of ensuring sort of COVID safe protocols at all times, of course. So yeah, really just, to once again thank you for your continued support, continued resilience that we've seen from yourselves, your staff, and our young people. So KPIs and quarterly returns. I know this is not the most exciting topic to go straight into after the little COVID update. But we really wanted to have a conversation with you guys about the KPIs and the returns that we're asking you to complete. And I think so often when we talk, when we're asking you for information, a lot of the feedback is understandably, how are you using this? Are you actually reading it? What are you doing? Why? This takes time for us to complete. What's the purpose? And so we wanted to have a conversation with you to answer all of those questions, really, and to just sort of outline that, and I think offer some reassurance that, this, and I'm not implying, of course, that it is for anybody, but this absolutely is not a box ticking exercise. It's an important process that we're feeding into our quality assurance mechanisms as well. So in July, which is tomorrow, it won't be tomorrow, but it'll be in July. We'll be sending out the quarterly returns for Q1, so April, May, and June, and asking you to provide us sort of a fair bit of information. And then Rachel Hiscox, who I think, again, a lot of you all know, will be sort of collating that information, and it will feed into what we're generally referring to our sort of provider risk tool. So as you know, for within our contract, we have a requirement to undertake quality assurance visits on a 12-monthly basis. We want to use, part of what we want to use these quarterly returns for is to help to rationalise the priorities for those visits, so to have those conversations and to understand that. And I think also it's important to make sure that we're able, if you're having concerns about some challenges that you're having, I think it's important that we're able to be open, transparent, and have those conversations together and work together. I think I probably say this every time, but at the end of the day, we are all here for the same reason. And I think we're all committed to ensuring that we've got good quality provision for our young people, and from your perspective, delivering a good quality service. And this is one of the ways that we want to use to identify, okay, so what do we need? How can we work together?
I think I just wanted to supplement Sam and back up what you're saying there. Previously, was commissioning in another authority, and I often found myself having conversations with bidders who would say, well, why were we unsuccessful? And one of the things which I often found myself saying was, but I couldn't measure that in regards to stuff they were telling me. So it's really useful for us to have a quantitative tool so we can see, well, how are things going? Because back in June, you told us this, it looks really good now. And also to help us, if you will, so we can spot trends. If we are seeing CSE concerns spike in a particular area of Peterborough or Cambridgeshire, we can liaise with our colleagues in the police, and hopefully we can get that through a multi-agency approach. So probably nobody smiles as they walk into work saying, hey, I'm doing my KPIs today, but it is really important to us.
Yeah, thank you, Ralph. So I don't know if anyone's got any sort of any questions about that. I know that I think we've had conversations previously about the sort of the collation of quarterly returns, and I think, you know, we have as with so many other things, we have seen some delays with that over the last year or so, largely impacted by COVID. And I think for us as well as for yourselves, during the last sort of 12 to 15 months, completing that quarterly return document rightly so, hasn't been a priority, but it is something that we're looking to implement in sort of coming well, weeks really. And I think if you've got any, when it comes out to you, if you've got any questions about sort of what am I trying to say? Like the terms that we're using, or how things are being interpreted, or how things are being used, I just really sort of, ask that speak with Rachel, get in touch with Ralph or myself, and we're happy to, answer those questions, work with you. We've tried to sort of balance the amount of information that we're requesting with making sure that, like I say, that it is information that is used, is valid, is going to feed into things, and into also some of the key performance information that's detailed within the specification. So, we have endeavoured to make sure that it's one task that delivers multiple sort of outcomes, rather than keep coming back to you for, oh, but could you tell us this, please? So any feedback is, of course, always welcome, and hopefully it's not too painful a process for you when it comes out in a few weeks. And I've lost my mouse. There it is. So if we move forward then into some sort of information about recent placement finding activity, and what we're seeing in terms of themes and trends across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And I think, Ralph, if I hand over to you.
Yeah, we felt it would be useful for you as you go forward in your business planning to look at the picture. Some of you will have worked with us for some time. Some of you will be considering whether you want to work with Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. Here's some slides to show where we are. You can see that in Cambridgeshire, we have, I mean, obviously we've only put a small number of months in, but I would say that reflects our perceived demand. Sam's going to talk to you about sufficiency strategies being published, in that we anticipate probably not a growing market. Peterborough seems to be levelling off, and that may be more of a case, but once again, we would see, hopefully, a decline in numbers overall, and we may well focus more on making sure we've got the right quality. Obviously, we're commissioners, we look after the public purse, we only have a limited fund to spend, and if we can increase the value, we would certainly want to do that. The next slide is particularly important. Sam, if you could just, as we say, next slide, please. When I look at this, I see we have too much orange and not enough blue. And I suppose that's a message I feel I need to get out there, which is there will be providers here who are not yet on our framework and are considering whether they want to work with us. We had a providers event yesterday, and I was speaking to someone from London who was saying, well, I'm interested, Ralph, but you know what? I think what will happen is I'll spend lots of time getting onto your framework. You, quite rightly, in the interest of your young people, want to keep most of them in county, so maybe you'll use me once, twice a year. If that, should I bother? Obviously, I wasn't going to say no, I would suggest you don't. That's a decision for you. But I think we can be clear. We would like to boost provision in county, in area. That's really important to us. Some of us here will parents ourselves and be aware that most people don't want to leave their natural support environments, and so I would like to think we will be moving more to where Peterborough was in May than where say, Cambridgeshire was in January. Next slide. Future demand, difficult to predict because, of course, anything can happen. However, you can see, surprise, surprise, our biggest cohort is 11 to 15. All things being equal, they may, depending on where they are, stay with foster carers in staying put. They may move back to families. They may be coming to look at supported accommodation. I can't speak for my colleagues in social care in terms of care planning, but once again, we felt it would be useful for you to see what we anticipate in terms of working its way through the age cohort. And next slide, please, Sam. Decided to put this into the UASC population separately. I'm aware some providers here will be perhaps more shaped towards unaccompanied asylum-seeking young people. Telling a picture where obviously unaccompanied asylum-seeking young people, lots could happen. I think you'll all have seen the Home Secretary saying she has some plans for how she intends to effect this. We are subject to political changes, and of course stability in other countries may be a factor. However, this has been our picture over the last 6 months or so. Once again, within Cambridgeshire, an overall decline, Peterborough probably being more level. Many of you will know that Peterborough is a preferred option for many of our unaccompanied asylum-seeking young people because there are more community cultural supports there. Okay, next slide. And Sam, I think it's back to you.
Thank you, Ralph. So yeah, I think I sort of touched on this a little bit earlier, and I think that I've had conversations with a lot of providers who have sort of asked, you know, the previous iterations of our sufficiency statements were coming to an end, and when is the new one being published? I'm happy to say I really like data, right? And I like a spreadsheet, and I quite like doing some analysis and some interpretation and sort of working with colleagues across the council to understand what our needs are, sort of reflecting back on the last few years and what we think that's going to mean. So this has been I feel like it's been a love-hate task, if I'm going to be honest with you guys, over the last year or so. But yesterday, the Cambridgeshire sufficiency strategy statement for children in care and care leavers was approved by committee, so it will be published on our website imminently. We've got 2 versions of the same document that we'll be sharing with you. So we've effectively got a sort of a more traditional format, I would really describe it. So more sort of text-based, less visual, effectively. And then we've got more of sort of an infographic version, a little bit more visually engaging, that will be and we'll be putting both of those online, and when we send, I'm hoping that will be completed before we get to sending the slides out. So sorry, I think my screen froze then. Yeah, so what we'll be doing, so sorry about that. What we'll be doing is we'll be sending out copies of our sufficiency statement with the slide decks, and as usual, everything will be published on our website. Rachel will provide links to that for everyone. The Peterborough sufficiency statement. So again, I think we've had this conversation a few times as well, but I like to think of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough as having we remain 2 legally distinct local authorities. By virtue of some of our shared services, we have a close working relationship. But in terms of making sure that our sufficiency duty is met, we've produced two entirely separate documents. So Peterborough's sufficiency statement will be going to Cabinet imminently in the next month, I believe. And yeah, pending their agreement to that document, we'll be publishing that as well. So there may be a slight delay in terms of a few weeks, but again, we'll be sharing that with you all. And I think what we've tried to deliver with that is, well, for both Cambridgeshire and Peterborough respectively, is to get under the numbers and also look at some sort of forecasting. And I think so Ralph touched on that with the sort of the age profile and the future demand, and really looking at, particularly in Cambridgeshire, and only because this trend is more applicable to Cambridgeshire, we've seen over previous years sort of our 16 plus population of children in care increasing, and in turn the number of children or of young people living in supported accommodation increasing as well. And you'll find in the Cambridgeshire sufficiency statement some sort of analysis into what we think that trend is going to look like going forward. Some information as to why we don't expect that trend to continue, particularly not to continue to increase at the rate it has done previously. And we've also had some requests from providers around some sort of analysis of pricing information. So obviously the prices that you submit or that you will submit if you're a prospective provider here with us today to our framework remain commercially sensitive, so we don't disclose those. As we would for any freedom of information request, we are able to share sort of average information that sort of gives an idea of sort of the cost makeup across the different lots. So again, many of you will be familiar with this, but within the supported accommodation framework, we have 4 lots of different service delivery. So lots 1 and 2 are for our non-unaccompanied asylum seeking young people, and lots 3 and 4 specifically for our unaccompanied young people. And then lots 1 and 3 are for those services that you deliver that offer that more sort of floating support. So perhaps 10 hours a week floating support to a young person within their accommodation that is provided as well. And then lots 2 and 4 delivering that more that sort of 24/7 support and accommodation. So and that's 24/7 as in there's staffing 24/7 rather than a 24/7 one-to-one provision for a young person. So hopefully that makes sense, obviously articulated much more clearly within the framework. And so we've given that breakdown, that understanding of, I think when we were developing the contract, and since then we've had lots of conversations with you about the different challenges that we face in terms of locations for provision. We've had lots of conversations about preferred locations, and I know that is a ever-changing picture, really. I think that we ourselves know that Cambridge City, Peterborough City, Huntingdon present good and the sort of Wisbech March area present good opportunities for supported accommodation provisions because of the transport links, the access to education provision, the access to local community services like religious and cultural facilities, gyms, things like that. But we also know that our young people themselves have preferences as to where they want to live, and I think that's where we've seen some slight variation in demand over recent years. And so yeah, that sort of pricing analysis gives sort of an overview of, okay, so average prices across those geographical locations as well, because I think we're all aware that accommodation costs in Peterborough are perhaps not comparable with accommodation costs in Cambridge City. So that should give you some sort of information, hopefully, that's really well, hopefully useful. Yeah, so in short, they'll be published any day now, and we'll be sharing them with you imminently. And thank you all. Before we get onto the stepping out program, I just wanted to have a conversation about sort of the contract monitoring and quality assurance visits that we are and will be undertaking. So sort of touched on this earlier. So the question about virtual or face-to-face visits, and I think that as we sort of progress on the roadmap out of lockdown, our preference would be to undertake face-to-face visits wherever possible. We are mindful that there are some situations where this won't be possible, perhaps due to location, perhaps due to any particular sort of COVID concerns that arise at the time, and also mindful that we can't see into the future and we don't know what that may bring, and so there may need to be a reliance on virtual visits more in the future as well. We will be, particularly for those providers who we've currently got children and young people placed with, or those providers that are operating locally, we will be in touch with you over the next few months to schedule visits. So our schedule of contract monitoring visits is already underway. I know that there are a few people with us today that we've already popped out to see and have conducted those. And I think, again, we touched on this a little bit in September when we came together, but I wondered if what I'm referring to, sorry, is the sort of almost, I think we talked about having sort of like a provider-led forum that was an opportunity for, we would help to facilitate that, but an opportunity for you guys to come together, share good practice, discuss any challenges that you were having, sort of share resources, maybe if you're looking at a training event and looking at cost efficiencies. And one thing that we were wondering was whether sort of themes and trends that we're seeing within our contract monitoring quality assurance visits. So obviously we would not be, there's no naming names. This is about, sorry, the slide is stuck on sufficiency statements. I seem to be having technical difficulties, and the contract monitoring and quality assurance slide doesn't seem to exist in this. No, it's okay. Good question. Thank you. I didn't think that the tech would, completely go without any fails. So if this is as bad as it gets, I think I'm okay with that. But yeah, so we were kind of thinking about having a look at some of those themes and trends and saying, like, okay, so let's make up an example. Training matrices. So let's pretend that no one's got a training matrix, so everyone is struggling to have an understanding of when people have got when people are coming up due to do refresher courses, where people have got gaps in their training, and particularly in terms of like the mandatory training. Would these events be useful to sort of come together and go, okay, so can we let's build something together that that works and delivers on that. I don't know how that feels from your perspective. So obviously that would, like, hopefully, like I say, be a case of coming together and, we're talking about improvements and learning and, sharing good practice. So I would hope that would be a positive thing. I don't know what anyone's thoughts are in terms of whether that would be something that you guys are interested in. like we're happy to, you know, if there are any providers that want to support us to look at developing, you know, like a bit of a trial run for one, we'd be happy to look at that. Equally, I think for future events, it would be, I think it's really important that this isn't, well, to be honest with you, isn't just me and Ralph sort of talking away about the things that we think you want to hear. I think it's really important that we hear from you guys. So are there topics that you would like us to update on, that like outside of the sort of quote unquote usual placement sufficiency information? Are there, you know, challenges that you're having that, you know, that you want answered? Are there things that we can support you with that, you know, and I mean, I can't make any promises, but always happy to have the question asked and to see what we can do together.
Yeah, and to just build on what you're saying there, Sam, as I mentioned already, worked on something similar to this in a different authority, albeit with Send. The nature of the business, many of you, is you'll be in one sense commercial competitors, in another sense you'll have shared interests. So within that, it would be really helpful for me and Sam, I think, if you were to email us probably initially and say this would be something of interest. If we find there's a critical mass saying, do you know what, training is really expensive and we all have to do X training every year, and if we can offer the option to organize that for several providers, you can access it cheaper, that might help us because you won't need to charge us as much. I do believe there's fields of common interest where we can work together. Obviously, if we're going into a new competitive tendering round, then of course there will be an aspect of we all need to keep our cards close to our chest. But I think there's lots we can build together. So some of you will also be aware that Sam, effectively as commissioner, has been ploughing a lonely furrow for a long time. So I'm very pleased to be here, and I hope now we have more capacity, we can be even more proactive in getting out. We are almost always happy to be contacted and discuss things. My own preference, and you will do what you wish to do, my own preference is a phone call rather than FOI, because I think it's just makes it easier for us to have a chat. Obviously, the FOI system is available to providers and bidders should you wish to use that. I think I've probably said enough there. You're still on mute, Sam, I think.
Yeah, sorry. I think that's like been the phrase of the last 12 months, right? Like, you're still on mute, or is that a legacy hand? So Rachel is going to be sharing a link to a feedback form for you all towards the end of this event. And what we'd really like is for exactly that. So, you know, like some sort of ideas to help shape what future events might look like we say, like the topics, the focus areas that you want to hear from. Thanks, Rach. And I can see some sort of feedback in the chat that so it will be good to create a network meeting for all providers where ideas can be shared and templates for best practice can be shared. And I think really, like, we're happy to be guided by you with this. So is it helpful to, like I say, happy to facilitate, happy to attend, happy to be told, actually, it's not helpful to have you there. Please go away. Let us have some open conversations between ourselves, and then, you know, and then you can, you know, come back to us with any questions or any sort of feedback or thoughts, you know, like, and I think my view is that this is perhaps not, it's almost not helpful for me to say this is how it needs to look. Like, it absolutely needs to be guided by you. It's obviously not a compulsory thing or anything like that. So if it's going to work, if it's going to feel helpful for anyone, it, you know, it needs to very much be led by you guys. So we just welcome any sort of any thoughts, feedback, any anything like that. Before we move on to the Stepping Out program, has anyone got any questions, thoughts, comments, etc. at this stage? Okie dokie, perfect. Well, like I say, like if anything comes up throughout, please just pop questions in the chat.
I think Fiona is with us if to do the next stage. I'm not sure if we need the slides, if that's something we can adjust. Brilliant.
Perfect.
Hi, I am here. I sneaked in early.
Thank you. I'm going to stop talking then and just hand over to you. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm not sure what everybody knows about the stepping out document, and you know who I'm exactly talking to. So I'll try and aim it at the right people, Sam.
Yeah, so we've got, sorry, Fiona. So we've got our supported accommodation providers here today. So, you know, our 16 plus services, and some providers are already on our framework, and we've got some prospective providers who are thinking about joining, and a mix of providers who work across all 16 and 17-year-olds, some providers who specialise in working with our unaccompanied young people. So yeah, an eclectic mix of everyone in.
Okay, so some people might have seen this presentation before that were at the other event, so I'm sorry if I'm boring some people, but hopefully there's a whole group that hasn't seen it. Sam, if you could, you know, the old messaging thing that comes up, I'm rubbish at that. I don't multitask. So if you could, if someone asks a question, if you could read it out for me, and then I will try and answer it that way. Is that okay with you? I think we did that last time. It seemed to work, didn't it, pretty well? Because I'm no good at doing both.
Yeah, no, that works.
Okay, so this presentation will take, I would think, about half an hour at the most. So it's not too long. So welcome, my name's Fiona Story. I'm a team manager in the Leaving Care team in Huntingdon, which is Cambridgeshire. And I was tasked about, Sam, a couple of years ago, is it? Seems a long time, to get a group together to come up with an independence passport. That Cambridgeshire at the time and Peterborough could use. So the group of us got together. Sam was part of that group, weren't you, Sam? And we had people from fostering. We had the PAs, some of the PAs in the Leaving Care service were there, who had residential experience. I had somebody from, I think 204 came along, the CHS group came along to support us. Various people who came to sort of put this together. So this isn't my thing on my own. I just sort of led it, really. And I think we wanted various people to come along to make sure, as this is a document that's going to be used by various people, to make sure people in their different fields felt comfortable with it and felt it served the purpose. We went to a couple of participation groups with it as well, to get feedback from young people. So they gave us some interesting feedback on it. And now we're launching it. So I think you're the last presentation that I will be doing. I have talked to our different providers, fostering, all people across Peterborough and Cambridgeshire, the school, virtual school, and various other people. So I think you're my last cohort to talk to. So I'm going to, if you've got any questions, as I said before, do please at the end stick a hand up, or because I know there's quite a few of you, we've got about 40 on the call. So feel free to stick a hand up or do a message, and Sam will read it out and I will try and answer it. I'm not bothered if it's halfway through and you've got a burning question and it comes up and it interrupts. I'm not bothered at all. I think sometimes it's hard to hold on if you're anything like me, because you forget what you're what question you want to ask. Okay, so let's start. So this is our person that will follow us through our independence passport, which we have named the stepping out document. So it's not called independence passport, it's called the stepping out document. Okay, so the next slide, please. Okay, so with that's it. If you can just keep pressing. I was very fancy when I did these slides and I regret it. So I did all the phasing out and all that, but it doesn't really work and I'm not sure how to take them off. So that's fantastic. Thank you so much. So the aims of this session is that you'll know what the stepping out tool is, why we need it in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, who's the stepping out tool for, how will it actually work in practice, and how will we implement it. Thank you. Keep pressing. That's it. Thank you. So what's the stepping out tool? It's a tool to support young people into successful, independent and adult life, and a tool to support key workers in teaching and coaching independent skills. Now, I know a lot of you will already be doing this, but this is a tool that all Cambridgeshire and young people that you look after for us we will be using, and we'll be expecting you to use this. So the tool, it sets out tasks for young people to complete that they will need when they become adults, and a tool that will support social workers in monitoring young people's progress towards independence. And also it will help them, I suppose it's a tool that will help young people and take them when they move placements. So the thing about this tool is that, and that I think will be really useful, is that what we found and what I found in the work that I've done over the years is that as a social worker, I'd go and visit young people and they'd be in residential or, in semi-independent, and the key worker would say, yeah, we're doing this, this and this. And they'd show, they'd either show me what they were doing, or I'd be well relieved that it's being done and I'd move on to something else. And I probably didn't own it, the independence work and the importance of it, and thought, oh, the key worker will get on with it. And then what might have happened was the young person moved on to another placement and with another organisation. And then that independence work just stayed within that old organisation and didn't go with the young person. So this tool will move with them. They won't start another one, it'll be theirs. Okay, next one, please. All fading, you see. If you can keep pressing, lovely. So why do we need it? So we need a tool that all children in care across both local authorities can use. We need it to focus the attention on the importance of equipping young people in care for independent life. I think as doing the leaving care work that I'm doing, I'm really surprised and shocked how poorly young people are prepared for independence, and hopefully this will give us a much clearer idea and get them equipped for independent life. So we need a consistent tool that no matter where the young person's placed, they will use, and they will take it in their journey through care, which I explained earlier. I think something that Sam, and I take this to all my presentations that I say, so if I've said it before and you listened, I'm sorry, it's boring, but I think it's really important. I think that I suppose with your 16 plus people, it's not so important, but I do think in our heads as social workers, we need to see it as independence as important as we do when children are young. So we would be appalled if we went to see a foster carer and they weren't potty training a child or teaching them to eat independently, you know, toddle about, all those sorts of, you know, get them being able to put their coats on and get dressed, we'd be really outraged, and it would be, oh dear, how dreadful. And we'd be having all sorts of investigations about why that wasn't happening. And yet when we come to thinking about independent sort of 14 and upwards, we forget how we don't seem to see that as important and as worrying, that a carer isn't teaching a child to cook or to budget or to catch a bus and those sorts of things. So this tool is about really putting the focus and the importance on that end of a young people's care career, I guess, care life, is that making sure that these independence tasks are as important as the early ones in their life. Okay, next one, please. So who's it for? Which I guess is important for you. So we're going to be introducing this to young people at 14. So when they come to 16 plus placements, they should already be bringing this with them. They won't at the moment, obviously. So the social worker will introduce it to them, but I would think in a couple of years' time, they should all be coming through with this. So so it's for foster carers and key workers and PAs to use and understands what skills a young person needs for successful independence. It's for social workers to actually understand what skills the young person has and plan their care and how to address gaps. So it's about social workers knowing, not just leaving it to key workers and keeping our fingers crossed that they're doing it, that actually we know exactly what where what their skills are basically, and where we need to work on. So we own it as an authority. We're just not leaving it to providers and keeping our fingers crossed. So it's for young people to practice skills in a supportive and safe environment. So as you will see, and it's probably not a lot different to some of the tools you have yourself that you're working on in your own individual companies. So it's about practicing skills in a supportive environment, and for young people and carers and social workers to celebrate success. So it's about saying well done, I guess, and being able to be impressed, and young people to feel proud of themselves, not just, oh dear, you haven't done this and you're not able to do this and you're nearly 18, you know. So it's so that's, I think, is really important part of it. Okay, next please. So the aims. So it's to develop and learn practical skills, and as I've discussed before, for successful transition to adulthood. It's to enable young people to be confident in developing their skills to become ready for adulthood and monitor their own progress towards independence. So what I suppose that is saying is that this isn't about young people being done to this and us going out with a tick box. This is about the young person owning this passport, this tool, so that it becomes theirs and not ours. And I think that's really quite important, that they have a say in it, what they want to do. And really, I mean, it's there. So if it's a Word, if they want to put pictures on, they don't like the pictures that's been put on there, they can put different pictures on if they want. It's their document, as long as it's appropriate pictures. So provide a framework. It provides a framework for foster carers and key workers to work with young people. So I guess what that does, and particularly for our foster carers, it gives them a really clear idea of what they're expected to work on 14 plus with the young people that they care for. And as I said, I'm sure you have all this anyway, so I don't want to labour the point. But so it shows clearly what needs to be done and how. it's a little bit, I guess, like and a little how you are an MVQ assessor. I'm not sure how many of you are, but it looks a little bit like that with observers' comments and things. So it provides a consistent, clear approach both internally and externally with providers. So this is, as I said, every young person's having this, and I think that it will make it more consistent. It won't be, well, they're with this place, so they're good at independent skills, and this other place isn't. You as providers will know what the expectation is of Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. As local authorities, you will know what we want. It won't be guesswork. So it'll be a bit clearer about what we expect from you. It provides opportunities for all young people to learn skills needed. We've discussed that earlier. And it enables those supporting young people to know exactly what they need. So it will be clear, targeted pieces of work that we do to support young people. Okay. Next, please.
I think just before we move on, so we just got a comment in the chat here that says that pathway planning from 14 years has been in place for some time and isn't new, but the format and the reporting has moved on and varied from provision to provision as time has gone on. And so my understanding is that, yeah, exactly that. And I think that we're very aware that it has varied from provision to provision. And I think that that's part of what we're aiming to overcome, for lack of better words, with this stepping out tool, is having a greater degree of sort of consistency, really, for our young people, so that, you know, like Fiona touched on earlier, if we've got a young person who's moving from one provision to another, that sort of that independence work that they've achieved with one provider goes with them to the next, rather than them having sort of, you know, a complete, well, you know, what might look like a completely different, you know, tool to work to when they move. I don't know if you've got anything to add there, but I think that we would just agree that, yeah, it has varied, and that's exactly what we're trying to do, is have some
and I think the thing is, it's that I think for young people as well, what I noticed is that if I was a young person and I went to one fostering, say, and then I went into a semi-independent and then to another one, and someone kept coming up with the same stuff, saying, "Oh, let's get this out. Let's do your independence work," and it was the same old stuff I was doing, and I'd done it the last time, and I'm fed up of saying it and doing it again, or I don't want to do it, so I say to somebody, "Well, I've done that, so I don't want to do it." Oh, I've done that. I used to have that. Oh, I've done that. They used to say, and they hadn't. So I think it stops that from happening. It's like anything. It's like any school. I guess you wouldn't go to one school to another and move schools as a young person without all your information going with you, or a doctor's surgery. If you move doctor's surgery, your information goes with you. It isn't, you don't start again with everything and all the information they're asking, you know, it all goes with you. And I suppose this is just one of those documents that goes with them to make sure we know exactly where they are and that they get the best opportunities to have a practice at this and be 18 and be able to have their own place at 18 and not a worry that they're not ready. Yeah, does that? I go on. If you ask me questions, I do go on. So it's a trait of mine. Okay, is that all right, Sam?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
So here we go. So how will it work in practice? I think there might be another one attached to that. Is there? No? Okay. So how will it? So the tool is person friendly, young person friendly, so they can actually use it, and it's been designed to be used by young people themselves in conjunction with their foster carers, residential and semi-independent workers. So the thinking is that this will come as a Word document. It'd be great to have some app but that may be something in the future that can be devised. I know it was just too expensive, and I think we need to get it right probably before we do that. But at the moment, it will come across in a Word document. It can be paper document if young person really wants that to be that way. But the idea is that they'll work together. They'll have the document and sit there and type with the carer or the residential worker and share it. So, and the idea is that I suppose is not so important for you, but it is more for us as a local authority and social workers, is that every 6 months we will sort of upload, we will ask for a copy of it and upload it onto the young person's file, and that way we've always got an up-to-date idea of where they are. So a Word document's going to be a lot easier to do that than a hard copy. If that isn't possible, a Word document, someone would perhaps we thought taking a photograph of where they are and then upload it, because the worst thing that I suppose I'm concerned about is that this will get lost. As we know, lots of things get lost, and it does, and we can try our hardest. But if that young person moves and someone doesn't pass on the document, or they said I gave it to the young person and Joey lost it or has deleted it or whatever, we've always got a more or less up-to-date document on their file. So it's important that everyone knows their roles and responsibilities. So this tool is monitored by everybody, and we all got to know where we fit in the system to make sure that it's successful. So the next one, please.
We've just got another question pop in, Fiona.
Yeah.
So can I ask why within a profile or when a young person's moving to a prospective provision, previous reports from child and care reviews and monthly reports aren't forwarded to that prospective provider to glean independence or independent skills at the point of placement? That's with the understanding that for some young people, including unaccompanied young people who are newly arrived, that wouldn't be applicable. And I think that tell me if you disagree, Fiona. I do think that, referrals often do include information about a young person's independent skills, and the where there are like particular focus areas and what young people's strengths are. I would imagine that there are many reasons why we wouldn't send CCR notes and monthly reports to all prospective providers. When we're exploring referrals, obviously that's a lot of information, confidential information to be shared.
Yeah, I suppose I see, Sam, this as a little bit different from something like that. All that sort of stuff is something separate that I would imagine, I don't know, is another thing. I would say that the idea of this, and I've written it, I suppose, quickly so I don't forget, it's more inclusive. All that information is something that a social worker's perspective on this person, on this young person, and they put it down quickly. And we're very busy, as you know you are, and it is the view of that social worker, whoever's passed it on, where they are. And actually this document is much more inclusive than that. So it includes it's the young person's work as well. So it's not a view of, oh, I did so and so and I did so and so with them, and they're good at this and they're good at that, because actually this is evidence to say it is. So it will come over once the young, to a provider, this will come over once all the other paperwork's done. Yeah, this will come over with them and be sent with them as a separate once they're settled. Right, okay, what are we doing next? Like you would expect, maybe at the first LAC review, it gets talked about whatever, but the social worker and the IRO will bring it up and say, oh, I have it, or have you got it, do you want it? I think it's very different. I see it as a very different place than all the other documents that come along with young people. I think in my experience, I've sent lots of things over to people and they say, I haven't received it. I haven't had that plan. I haven't had that information, because there's so much information that comes across at that point of moving a young person that it gets lost. And so I think this is something different to maybe that CCR stuff. This is much more owned by the child, because that other paperwork certainly isn't. And the other thing is, to answer that question a little bit, actually, you'll have 16 plus young people coming to your provisions, so they'll have their pathway plan. Now this will be in their pathway plan, yeah, so if you're reading their pathway plan, you will see where they are in it and what the actions are in their pathway plan and what the goals are around independence in this plan. So it will be in there, so it sort of works in conjunction maybe with those documents you talked about. Is that all right, Sam, or whoever's asked that question?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's perfect from my perspective, but please, yeah, come back to us if anyone's got any questions or any sort of follow-on queries with that.
Okay. So roles and responsibilities. So it's the foster carers and the key worker's responsibility to work with the young person on the agreed areas. So that's been agreed with the social worker at the at a meeting together with the young person and the key worker about what they want to do. At the IRO at those meetings, it can be decided, or just with the young person themselves. But that's who will, key workers will be working this document. It's their responsibility to actually do the work. So supervising social workers. So so I don't know whether there's any fostering agencies here. I'm not sure. So supervising social workers, though, will be monitoring this. So if you have any young people that have come from fostering to you, which probably you will have, 16 plus and semi-independent, getting ready for independence, they should have this as they come to you. They should, the supervising social will be making sure, so it's their responsibility as well.
And I think equally with sort of the managers within semi-independent provisions, within the sort of the QA checks that you guys will already be undertaking, looking at key working sessions and things like that. I think where we've got supervising social workers here, making sure that the foster carer, it's about you guys working with your support workers to make sure that they are supporting the young person to work through the document. So I think we can almost just swap out supervising social worker for, like, I don't know, like service manager or whatever your equivalent is.
So then we've got the young person social worker. So it's their responsibility to introduce the tool to a young person with their carer when the young person turns 14. So this is when it's not necessarily have to be worked at that point, but the conversation, the flicking through it, it needs to be introduced at that point. So they will have one at 14. And then at each visit, the social worker discuss and monitor progress. So that's the monitoring. So the social worker is one of the people that will monitor the progress of the plan at each visit. And then, as I said, it will inform the pathway plan and the care plan. So this tool should be woven in to the pathway plan, and at the end with the goals and the actions and who's doing what. That's where it should be saying who's got to do what there. So it's clear, really clear who's doing what and when and where. Okay, next bit so it carries on. So this is also the bit about quality assurance and managers that Sam was talking about. So personal advisors also work with this stepping out tool with a person when they're 17 on accommodation. And basically, if anything needs to be done and it's felt appropriate, the PA will work on pieces of the tool, bits of it that it feels necessary. and especially around that accommodation. I think that's really important. So independent reviewing officers, at every review that is attended, they will discuss this tool and how we're getting on, and is it being incorporated into their pathway plan. So they'll record the achievements and areas to be worked on. So it's another area of monitoring. So a big heavy thing for this is that it's monitored and not forgotten. I think so often we bring in these ideas and we think they're great, and then they get forgotten, and it's not embedded in social workers' work. And this is going to be embedded in everything, like I said, right at the beginning of their life, is embedded that we're making sure young people are potty trained and know how to feed themselves and dress themselves. That's embedded. That's just a natural piece of our work is embedded in. And this now will be embedded in our work, and it won't be a phase that Cambridgeshire and Peterborough are going through because they've been told to do it. This is, or it's the latest thing. This is something that will be embedded in every piece of work for the next year, for years to come. So managers, it's a tool that will be discussed and monitored and progressed in supervision, and this includes fostering managers and, like Sam said, managers within your companies will be looking at it as well and making sure it's done. As you will be, I know, the ones that you do already, but this will be for Peterborough and Cambridgeshire. This will be the one that you follow. And then quality assurance. So our own quality assurance teams will be checking we're using it, and it's being discussed in supervision, and that it's IROs are monitoring it, the social workers are monitoring it, and that key workers and foster carers are working it. So that's another way of making sure it's embedded in practice. So our audits this will be on our audits and expected that we're doing it. So when it's not, we'll know about it. Okay, next slide.
And equally, like when we're conducting our contract management and quality assurance visits, we'll be asking for evidence that this is the tool that you're using and that you're working through this with young people. So yeah, we'll be asking to see it as well.
Okay, next slide. So this is quickly so I've talked about this. So it's responsive to the young person's social worker to introduce a stepping out tool. And what I say is that to all social workers, that don't just take it out and not include the key worker or the foster carer in it before the young person sees it. So as regarding supervising social workers, they have to make sure that they're sending it to the supervising social worker to say, I'm coming out with it. Can you show it to your foster carer before I bring it out, so that the foster carer knows exactly what it is and they're not on the back foot? And I'd say that's the same for any key worker. Social worker contacts the key worker, so I'm coming out on a visit. I'm planning on showing so and so the new stepping out tool. This is what it is. You've probably been told, or you've gone on, you've seen a presentation, or your bosses have told you about it, but just in case they haven't, this is it, and this is what I'll be saying. So the key worker isn't either like, oh, what's this about? Never heard of this. They're prepared that it's going to happen. I think it's really important that we're included and people don't feel done to, and want to work the document, not feel it's a load of rubbish. Why am I doing this when we've got a decent one ourselves? So yeah, so this is much more round so it's expected that IFAs, residential and semi-independent providers will all work with this tool to support young person to independence. So I've hammered that one home, haven't I? It needs to be implemented in sections that the young person's placed and agreed every 6 months. So that goes back to our meeting at the LAC reviews. It doesn't have to be done all in one go. It can be done in little bits. It has to be done at the young person's pace. If you don't feel that, if a key worker doesn't feel that they're quite ready to do a certain piece of work, then discussions about it. I think the biggest thing and I think it's more in foster care probably, is that sometimes is ensuring conversations happen, because I think sometimes we believe young people know stuff when they actually don't, because we just think, oh well, you know, it's catching a bus, or you know, cooking, or going shopping, they know about that, or reading the meter, but actually they don't know. So it's ensuring at least the conversations are started. So as I said about the Word document, it will be electronic. It'll be electronic form. Every 6 months can be uploaded on the young person's file. So you will be asked at the LAC review basically to for it to come over, and I think that then the pathway plan will be updated after the LAC review, so it can be added into there what the actions are as well, if needed be. And then we've talked yet again, the stepping out tool will move with the young person if they move placement or when they move placement. So you need to have that needs to be part of what gets transferred over to the social worker at the point of moving, whether that be to independence or to another semi-independent provider. That has to be part of what the key worker is passing over, and the documents that are being passed over, along with the plans and different things. Okay.
Thanks, Fiona. And we had one question that came up the other day when we were talking with a provider around the sort of the 6-month review, and I just wondered if we could clarify. So I think that the question that we had posed to us was, are we asking to, or are we going to be reviewing this every 6 months, or is our expectation that providers work with young people to almost complete it on a 6-monthly basis?
No, I think the idea is all about monitoring it, really. So I think, and it is about doing it at the young person's pace and not feeling, gosh, we haven't done this, you know. But so every time the social worker comes and visits, they'll be, you know, as appropriate, checking in on how you're getting on with what the task set. Have you had a chat? Shall we have a look at it? And they'll be looking at the document with the young person and the key worker, say, or asking, oh right, last time they were gonna do a bit of shopping and cook, you know, they've got £5 to cook for, you know, do a meal. How did you get on with that? Yeah, that sort of informal chat, that is like monitoring it. And then at the LAC reviews, that's when the IROs will just be saying how you're getting on with the tasks set from the last LAC review, you know, and they'll be saying, you could be saying, oh yes, we did the A, B, C, D, and E, but we haven't done da di da di no, the da di da di da, that sort of thing. So it's not like really, really rigid, but what we want to make sure that it's being recognised and worked. So it might be that so-and-so wasn't ready to do the shopping at the moment, but what we did was we went on the internet and looked at the cost of things, and we talked about it. Something like that. Is that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. That's perfect. Thank you, Fiona.
So can I have that? So this is the last slide, really. And I've put it in this sort of little flow chart just to show how everybody is responsible for it and how it sort of all works. So what social care's responsibility is, what the fostering services responsibility are, residential's responsibility, you know, working through it, you know, ensuring that the stepping out tool accompanies the young person with their information when they change placement. And I think that then feeds in, and we've got your semi-independent providers as well there that I've put in how that works and how it sort of moves through from fostering to residential or then to semi-independent, and then how everything feeds into their care plan, pathway plan, or their housing plan. So what I've been part of with our housing specialist housing PA, a joint protocol for Cambridgeshire. And part of that is that they are taking this document and want to have it as evidence that the young person's tenancy ready. So this will make them go up another banding. I think some authorities do it, like we have different districts within Cambridgeshire, as you're probably aware. It's quite confusing. But some districts ask for certain tasks to be done before they can be a band A and so forth. So this will go with their housing application to show that they've completed this work. And I think that is really when we've used it. So I've used it with we've used it within the leaving care team. And an example was young person. She must have been about 18 and a half, and she wanted to move somewhere, and we didn't know, went to her own independent place, and we had no idea of what she could do. And she was already in a independent placement, not independent, semi-independent or supported placement. And she wouldn't do any of their work, and she wasn't cooperating. We said, we've got no idea about what your skills are. So her PA took the stepping out document to her, and she poo-hooed it and said, it's babyish, it's rubbish, I don't need to do this, it's a load of rubbish. But PA said, look, if you complete this, I can put it in with your application, and you're more likely to get yourself the flat that you're after. So anyway, she did it, and thoroughly enjoyed doing it, and got over the bit that it looked a bit babyish to her, which is fair enough, and actually was really positive and had real positive benefits for her. So I think for the young people, it's a little bit carrot for them when they're feeling a bit fed up. It will accompany their housing application. Okay, so that is the last slide before I go on to show you a quick whistle-stop tour of the actual document that we've produced and want you to work. Okay, is any questions about any more questions? Are you okay? So
none from the group, Fiona, but again, something that sort of came up the other day and I think you kind of covered this off with the example that you gave about a young person that's not yet ready to sort of cook a meal independently, but can sort of start to have a look at some tasks that give you an idea of like how much things cost and how to shop effectively and things like that. So I think one of the providers I spoke with the other day usually supports unaccompanied young people. And the question that they had was that this tool doesn't provide almost some of the support that an unaccompanied young person might need before we get onto the budget management focuses that are in the tool. So things like understanding like the currency and knowing where to shop for culturally appropriate foods and things like that. So what I'm understanding is that this is like our universal tool, and we would be expecting providers to work with social workers and PAs to make sure that this tool is then tailored to each individual young person's needs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was brought up at at one of the presentations I did. I think the unaccompanied concerns about messages it might give regarding, well, I'm staying, I'm staying in the country because I've been given this, and it means all these things that it doesn't mean. And I think there are different concerns that have been raised around that group of young people, and I think it is complicated. So I think my answer to that is exactly what you said, really, is that it does need tailoring. And some of this stuff, I don't, when they're doing ESOL and things, I imagine some of that currency and stuff will be part of that work as well. The basic stuff, and it's whether or not, I'm guessing at a later date, whether we need to get together to think about something for unaccompanied young people, if that's a gap, and I think it was Jane in Key 2 raised it, is, you know, is that's a gap that we're missing a bit, and maybe we do need something a bit more specific, or if they're doing something, because I think there's lots of what I learned doing this really is, and I know it, I haven't really learned it, I knew it, and that's, there's lots of really good work going on out there, so let's have a look at it and let's use it for Peterborough and Cambridgeshire. You know, that's what I did, getting people, lots of people involved in it, was let's not reinvent the wheel. If you've got something that's really good, let's look at it, let's unpick it, let's use it. And it might be that unaccompanied young people need a one before this, you know, a staged approach, and this one comes in after they've done certain other tasks. And I think, you know, that keeps coming up, that question, and I think it's a good question and it's a good query to have, and I don't want to just push it under the carpet because, oh well, because I think someone said about getting it translated, which you can do, but if we're not careful, we're gonna have lots of these documents all over the shop, and it could get confusing, and it's whether or not we need to think, well, this document won't be translated because actually they should be doing, this is part of an unaccompanied young person's journey to learn about English, to learn about all these things, and actually that this bit might not need to be translated, but maybe there's a document before that that might be, but I would be expecting this to be part of their teaching to get them ready, you know, part of what they have to learn, but there might need to be something before. So I think we need to take that away really, Sam, and think about it. You know, think about, do we need another, if we're thinking about what does cash look, what, you know, the cash, it's another step, isn't it, that's very different. I mean, as far as learning disability is, they're doing their own, because it just comes so complicated that we'd never get anything done. So we need to have something for the bulk of our young people in care. And this is what this is. And I think we need to start listening to the feedback. So I think this time next year, we need to all come together and get feedback on this. And I don't know how we do that, but I think that's what needs to happen. So then this won't be right. It won't be perfect. So what do we need to keep and what do we need to change? And the unaccompanied bit, I think, is really important. And maybe that's something Nikki can take a lead in as well with our providers for young people, because they're the ones working it as well.
Yeah, no, I think that sounds like really, yeah, thank you. Can't get that sentence out, but I think that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, so if that's my last slide, so then I just need the, I sent the booklet over, I sent the actual document over, Sam. Sent 2.
Yep, give me just 2 seconds and I will just shuffle my screens around. Just while I'm sorting out my tech, has anyone got any questions as to about the stepping out tool? I think that another one of the questions that we'd had posed to us was exactly that, around like that review process and sort of offering feedback. So I think it's, you know, I think it's really positive that that's already something that we've got in mind. I think, like you say, Fiona, it's not, you know, we've not got an expectation that we've absolutely nailed this on the sort of first attempt. And I think, you know, feedback is really valuable, but I suppose that we'd just be asking that providers, you know, sort of try it in action first.
Yeah, I think nothing, you know, I think it'd be silly to think it's just pucker. But so I think feedback's really good. Like when we were this has been ages in the making. So we've been sending it out for feedback to providers, we've gone to foster carers, we've gone to young people, and changed the document as needed with the feedback, because it's been really useful. Some of the feedback, like, you know, has been really useful from various people, because it's some things that we just don't think about, you know. So yeah, and everything needs to be reviewed and changed, doesn't it? It's part of the process of learning and making something as great, as good as we can.
I seem to be having massive technical challenges. Is my screen sharing?
No, you're showing as a big SN.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that, it's a bit rude.
No, not at all.
It's a big SN.
Rachel, are you okay to share your screen? Teams appears to have failed on me.
Yeah, just bear with me 1 second and I'll get it all set up.
And I think some other questions that or some sort of, not questions, probably more comments that we've had, Fiona, are around, like we say, where providers have got tools that they're using previously, that maybe are already slightly more tailored to their cohort of young people. I suppose that we would be saying that we're asking you to move towards completing the stepping out tool, but we would see no reason why that couldn't be supported by, say, additional modules that are contained within other sort of independence passports or sort of support mechanisms. But we would expect that to be incorporated into the individual young person's stepping out tool as part of their journey.
Yeah, I think you know, this has to be used. Yeah, so I think that's the baseline, but I think it is about it being flexible, so that if you feel something needs to be added, then you have a conversation with the social worker and say, this is what we've been doing, this is what we think is useful, and if that's seemed fine, then that's fine. I think it's as long as the document's being used. I mean, one of the questions that was asked of me by some of the social workers was, if somebody is you know, like 17 and a half and they've worked their way through the independence passport that they've, you know, that the providers have already been using, do we have to start the stepping out document and not use that one? And I just think it's about being sensible, really, isn't it? This document is about ensuring young people are prepared for independence. If they're 17 and a half and they're working a really good one, why, you know, you just say, you talk to the social workers, you talk together and decide whether or not it's in the best interest of that young person, or they're working so well towards this one that we'll stick with this one. So I think you just got to go to the social worker and discuss it. But the expectation is that every young person will have, it's launched, you know, as of now. The social workers will come to the key workers and say, I'm bringing out the document, and then the conversation can start, you know, 3 months before they turn 18. Say, it's, you know, it might seem a pointless thing to do, or it might not.
Fiona, I'm just see, is that shared okay for you? Can you see
Yeah,
the document
I can
now?
see it now.
Okay, I'm just conscious of time, and obviously we've got
Okay, I'll move on quick. Okay, so this is, so do you want to just, we'll do a whistle stop tour of this? Whoever's got control of the screen?
Yep, just direct me where you want me to go, Fiona.
Yeah, just whiz down, so it just goes down. If you just go down, should. So there we go. So that's a brief summary or an overview of what's in this tool. So if you keep going. The life skills that will be discussed in there. It's that there it is. These are the sections. Yeah, if you just keep going, and then bit around healthy eating, and this is the bit about a discussion with young people. You have to keep going.
Fiona, you said you're happy to take questions as they come in, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just had one on the chat, and I think it's largely addressed by your earlier comment, but my understanding is that Stepping Out Doc will be a generic piece of work for all to use within, I presume that's social services and young person, and not up for adaptations unless the author agrees and amends. Absolutely complete with Stepping Out Doc. I think you addressed that just now, didn't you, in terms of if work's been done elsewhere?
Yeah. So I think what Sam was saying was that if you're doing other bits, you can add it in. I mean, it's a document in its own right. You can add bits to the end of it or whatever. Yeah. It is.
Yeah, or presumably
It's about being sensible, I think. And you discuss it with the social worker. I think in the first instance, the key worker needs to go to the social worker and say, this is what we thought would be a good idea. Can we do it as part of the work, the Stepping Out document? And I would think they would say absolutely.
So this is how we fulfilled that criteria in this document. So yeah.
Yeah.
I hope that addresses that comment or question.
Yeah. So there, as budget, so a budget of £5, that's the bit where the young persons, they felt that was appropriate. Sticking the receipts in, and then they're talking about 7. So you wouldn't just do this once, do it lots of times as needed. So that's the MVQ type thing, is the observer writes the comments. So key worker in your instance probably will be writing how that went, and then the conversations, price comparison. So yeah, just keep going through to give people a flavour. It's time short. Keep going. So reviewing meals, list of meals. Yeah, and that can go on. It's a Word document, so you can add bits if it's not big enough. There's talking about laundry. There's just a few symbols there. We did have loads in there, but it got silly. So we just put the basic, or when they did their laundry, how it went. Again, conversations with young people that I'm sure most of you will be doing anyway. There you go, another bit. So it repeats itself, but this is the laundry bit. Public transport. They're the conversations about where you went. That helps people. It gives a framework for people to work with and have conversations with. There you go. So again, the observer comments, and it reviews how it's gone. And money. Yeah, so conversations about money. And this obviously budgeting is a big one, isn't it? Paying bills, so young people know what they're likely to be paying, and talking about finances. It's always a difficult area, but this is the funnest area, is having essentials versus non-essentials, because of course it's always different for young people compared to perhaps what we believe. Reading a meter, I mean, that has come out time and time again with us. When young people leave care, they don't know what a meter is, they've never seen a meter. And interestingly enough, that's from some people that have done really good. I know they've been in one of the providers since they were 18 and they were 21, so things get missed sometimes. So it's those conversations. Okay, so energy, so conversations about top tips, and then this is CV, how to do one, what's on offer, options. So that's all in this as well. So again, people are having conversations with young people. It's not getting missed. It's another sort of backstop really to make sure young people are having these conversations. Okay, keep going. So what's my plans, next steps? This is your CV, how to help a young person write a CV. And importantly, support networks. So this talks about people, and they can add obviously to those boxes. Yeah, so contacts, who goes in there, what's in their phone, who you need to, and that change of address. So these are things that I wouldn't expect a young person to sit and read these things. It would be these are support key workers and foster carers having conversations. So there we go. When I get stuck, where do we go? So you will add yeah, that this will be added in as and where the young person lives, where to go to support. So that'd be a bit, we've put ideas in there. One of the feedback was to have, we want loads of stuff in there, but actually I think that's a piece of work that can be done because it changes for each young person and for the area they live in. So we've put ideas in there. Keep going, I think coming near. Yeah, so that's the end. Okay, so that is our whistle stop tour. So I don't know, Sam, how you want to send this around to people. Somebody, I did glance that someone asked for the presentation slides. Was that right, or did I make that one up? I don't know. I vaguely remember seeing somebody asking for this. Yeah.
Yeah, so we'll be sending the slides out, and we'll send around a copy of the stepping out tool. I think a lot of providers have already had that, but I'd rather share it too many times than not enough. We've had a question in the chat around how any additional costs will be managed. So I think I'm probably going to need to take that away for today and come back to you on that one, Peter. So that was particularly around sort of if we're asking key workers to support with, say, transport, those like additional journeys. But
I guess that sort of thing, I would imagine when I've worked with young people in residential or in semi-independent, often they are things that people are doing just generally because they're getting young people ready for independence. So I'm hoping it's not going to be over and above any cost, but that's nothing to do with me really. And as regarding Zita, the £5 here and for food, people do that out of their allowance that they have anyway. So what one residential unit did, in my recollection, with one of the young people I worked with, they gave them so much to budget, and they worked it out that way with myself about how they'd use the money, and then put some in savings and different things. So hopefully it won't cost you any more. But I guess that's up to you, Sam. I'll leave that with you.
Thank you. Okay. I don't know if anyone else has got any questions for Fiona about the tool.
Okay. I'll take that as a no then, and I'll
time.
leave you. No problem at all. It's been a pleasure. And good luck with it, and I hope you really find it beneficial. Okay.
Thanks, Fiona.
Bye all. Bye.
Hi again, everyone. So in terms of next steps, so we are about to be joined by David Isaacs from procurement, who's going to have a conversation with sort of prospective providers who might want to be joining the framework. And we'll talk about the sort of the timescales for that. So any providers who are already on the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough framework for supported accommodation services for young people in care, obviously, I mean, you're welcome to stick around, but it will not be applicable for you. So I just wondered if at this stage anyone's got any questions before we likely say thank you and see you soon. I continue to be having huge technical difficulties today. So I don't know if there are any questions coming through in the chat. Equally, I think everyone's got sort of Ralph and my contact details and Rachel's. So if you've got any questions that you'd like to consider on an individual basis, drop us an email and we're happy to have those discussions.
We've got a question through, Sam.
Cheers, Rach.
We've got a question. Do existing providers need to complete any part of a new tender?
And I think we've written out to most existing providers, asking them to agree the extension to the current framework. So as long as you return that, I believe you'll be okay.
Yeah, and if you are a provider on the framework and you're thinking, what extension letter? Just drop Ralph or I an email. And we appreciate that some people are working in offices, some people are working virtually and remotely still. So, things might not have gone to the right email addresses. So just drop us an email if you're thinking, what on earth is that about? But in short, no, if you're already a provider on the framework, you don't need to do anything other than any actions in accordance with the extension.
Thanks, Sam. We've got another couple of questions through. So we've got one asking, is the new tender out? And the other is, if we are on the framework but would like to tender for additional lots, how do we do this?
Okay, so the new tender is not out yet. It will be going live in, I believe, July.
I think we're publishing it on the 16th of August is my recollection. I can confirm that, but I know David will have the dates precisely, but my recollection is August.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you, Ralph. And so that's why we wanted to invite prospective providers today to be able to have these discussions. If you're on the framework but want to tender for additional lots, depending on which lots you're on, you may need to undertake some additional method statements and evaluation criteria. So I think perhaps we could have an individual conversation. Is that Mark? If we could have an individual conversation about that, Mark, and we can sort of clarify what actions might need to be taken there.
Okay, and then we've got one more question. What is the process regarding potential new services if we are already on the framework?
So providers who are already on the framework will be receiving referrals from the respective Cambridgeshire and Peterborough access to resources teams, call-offs. So those referrals or call-offs are made on an individual basis for each young person. The framework does have a zero guarantee of spend. So that is to say that there's no, for any one provider, there's no commitment that the local authority will spend a set amount or any amount. But then the access to resources team will work with social care colleagues to identify the placement that is the most appropriate match for the young person in accordance with their individual needs, and will procure or again call off that service as a result. Nicola, do all the properties need to be in either Cambridgeshire or Peterborough? So I wouldn't say need to be. I feel that we have got a preference for our young people to live in Cambridgeshire or Peterborough, where it is safe and appropriate to do so. I think we're cognizant that there will be instances where it is in accordance with the young person's care plan to ensure that they're not living in Cambridgeshire or Peterborough. But that tends to be the exception rather than the rule. Our preference is to ensure that we've got access to, I think, like Ralph touched on earlier, access to good quality, cost-effective local provision for our young people. If we put the overview of the lots in the sort of the documents that we circulate after this, and we'll take that out of the spec, and you won't get my bungled definition, then you'll get sort of the formal definition. And so just to confirm, no, if you're already on the framework, there is no need to reapply again, but you will have been contacted about an extension. So if you've not, if that sounds completely unfamiliar to you, or if you've got any queries about that, please reach out to Ralph. I don't know if anyone else has got any questions, but I just wanted to just take this time to thank you all for joining us today. I think it's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour of some sort of information that we wanted to share with you, and I just ask you to take the time to complete the feedback form. It should only take a couple of minutes. Like I say, just keep in mind anything that you want to see in future events. You know, I think we're really committed to making sure that, you know, that you're getting the information that you want and need from us in these events, as much as we're communicating with you the things, you know, the gaps and the themes and the trends that we're seeing. So thank you again. Like I say, anyone is welcome to stick around, but this next section will only really be relevant for those providers that haven't yet joined the framework. So you're welcome to excuse yourselves, so to speak, while I hand over to David Isaacs. Thank you, David.
Hello there. Right, I'll just see if if tech's working a bit better for me, and I'll try and screen share.
Thanks. That's working.
There you go. It's working. Lovely. Thanks for the confirmation, Sam. Right, where's the present mode? Okay, so basically I'm just going to give you a run through of the website that we use and how to actually use it. It can be a little tricky sometimes, but don't worry, I'm always on sort of a hand to like lend help as and when needed. And if even after this, when you go to use the website and you get really stuck, we can arrange a phone call and I'll talk you through how to use the website as well. So don't panic, you know, and if you have a problem, don't stay quiet about it. Let me or somebody know and we will arrange to sort it out. So the website that we use is a website called Pro Contract. It's run by a company called Proactis, and just as a little anecdote, it was bought off another company called Due North. And so sometimes you may hear people just in general conversation refer to the website sometimes as Pro Contract, sometimes as Proactis, sometimes as Due North, the old name, and sometimes people may refer to it as under the generic name, which is sourcing portal or sourcing website, tender website, whatever, whichever. Right, why are my slides not moving? There we go. Okay. So I'll go over an overview of the website, how to register your business on there, how to search for contracts, how to register your interest in a contract, how to submit your response, and how to use the messaging area as well. The messaging area is really important because obviously if you need any help at all, then that's your first port of call. Okay, so apologies for the old acronym there. We shared the website with Northamptonshire County Council and the slides were last edited by somebody from there. But yeah, so it's a website that Cambridgeshire County Council uses to run its tenders. It is required by law. There is no paper option. The government decided that that everything tenders should now be run electronically. It contains all our current contract opportunities, so over a certain value, ones below I think about 5,000 aren't advertised because it's not worth the officer time involved in running a tender at that level. And it's linked to the it links to a contract register as well, and also links to contracts finder. So so there is a sort of like a central government website called Contracts Finder, where again contracts over a certain value, I think it's £25,000, are required to be advertised by law. And so we post an advert there, but those adverts link back to Pro Contract. Okay, sorry, I'll just skip that slide as it's no longer relevant. So so when you first go to the website, you'll want to register. Registration's fairly straightforward, but there's just a slight nuance that I need to explain for everybody to understand. So as you can see there, it's rather just a normal login page, you know, username and password. And if you're not registered, there's a register link to the side there that you will need to click on. When you register, it goes through all the usual details. You know, what's your company's name, address, who are you, what's your contact details, etc. When you register, it creates a company account, and then beneath that you have user accounts as well. So the person who sets it up will generate two accounts, one for the company and one for themselves, and they will by default be the administrator for the company account. So if you want, so say for example, if you want a group of people, say 2 or 3 people within your organization set up with access to the website, so that say if one person goes off ill, another person is still able to log in and complete the tender, then the person who first created the account then needs to go into the account settings and set up and then create new user accounts from there. So all they need is basically like the person's details, like name and email address, and pop in things like job title and contact phone number and whatnot. So there you go. So you got your so you have your team set up. Once you are into the website, and you'll be provided with a link for it. At the top there, you can see there's the main menu bar. At the top, you've got home, find opportunities, your activities, contracts, and the help section. So very important to point that out. The next thing highlighted is the search box, which is you know, just a generic search box, but used by a lot of people. In the middle of the screen there, you can see there's a box that's called activities, and it says active, recently added, and last viewed, with a search option. So the first place you would go is my opportunities, and that will bring up a list of tenders that we currently have live. Now, it won't just be our council. This website is actually used by councils all over the nation. So one of the benefits of registering is if you register for Cambridgeshire, you're automatically registered then to access tenders from some neighbouring authorities as well, if you're looking to branch out, or if you're a national organisation. You know, ones up north or down south or east west, for example, you'll have one account that will work for all of those authorities. But you can filter, you can just search the word Cambridgeshire and it'll bring back the Cambridgeshire contracts. So when you go in, so you go to find opportunities, look at the list of tenders currently available, use the search and other options to narrow down the results, you know, just like you would on Amazon when you're searching for a product. And then when you see the title of one that you think you're interested in, you click on the title, and that takes you through to the advert. This is what an advert looks like. So it just gives you a brief overview, the title, the categories, and a brief description of what the tender is. And as you can see highlighted in red there's a green button that says register interest in this opportunity. Okay, so this is just a front page for the tender. It doesn't do anything else, it just allows you to register, but you must click that registration button. When you register, it adds the tender, the actual tender, to your activities. And if I just go back to the home page, that middle bit, that bit in the middle there, activities, that is where the tender will now appear. So once you've clicked register interest, it will appear there. It'll actually appear under recently added. You need to click on recently added, and then it will and then you'll be able to see it. Okay, so the main page of the contract contains the contract details. It contains attachments such as the ITT and specification, terms, conditions, and any other like appendices that there may be. It will set out the time, it will display clearly the time remaining to submit a response, and you'll see that on the next slide. It will give you access to the messaging area as well, which I said is very important for contacting us. And it will contain a start your response button, which is on the next page too. So there you go. So you can see very clearly in a big green box there the time remaining to submit your response. So this is from, as I said, an example contract. But as you get closer to the deadline, it will change from green to orange to red. Beneath the clock, the countdown timer, is the messaging area. So you can see there it says you have 0 red messages, and you just click view messages. And below that is the response controls, where there's a big green button that says start my response. So clicking that will open up the questionnaire for you to fill in. Right, so some tips when you are doing your response. So make sure that you read the questions carefully, I should say. Make sure that you've understood them, and also, of course, same advice as any teacher would give to their students when doing an exam or an essay. You know, go back after you've done it and moved on to the next question. Make sure you go back and reread it as well. It's always worth going back and checking, because you might spot that you misinterpreted something, or that you missed something out of your answer that you think you should add in. So always worth having a reread as well. On the website, so there's an online questionnaire. There'll be documents to download, such as the specification, but the questionnaire itself that you fill in and where you do your response will be online. It's a bit like a you know, an online survey. Some are tick boxes, some are drop boxes, some are yes no, where you just select the option. Some you type in an answer, and some you add a document with your answer in it. So when you look at the list of questions, you'll notice that there's a little traffic light next to some of them. So any that are showing as red with a red traffic light, those are mandatory questions. So you need to make sure that you put an answer to those. If you do not do that, then the system will prevent you from submitting your response. So that's something always worth double checking. So if when you're done and you're ready to submit your response, but you can't find the submit response button, have a check through the mandatory questions and make sure that they're all completed. Some, you know, 9 times out of 10, it's that a question has just been missed, and it just needs a quick answer to it, and then it will display the submit response button. Also, there are optional questions as well, but those are optional depending on circumstances. So make sure you check those and check if they apply to your company. If not, please try and put NA against those, so we know they don't apply to your company. So while you're editing your response, you will see this where it says my responses version 1 draft, and with an edit option. So you can save at any point, go on holiday for a week, come back, and then finish off your tender. So all you do is look for your current version and click edit to get back into it. When you have submitted, it will, where it says draft, it will say submitted. So if you want to know if your response has been submitted successfully, just look there, and if it says submitted, then it is submitted. It should also say submitted underneath the countdown timer as well. You have up until the deadline to make as many changes as you like to your tender. So if your circumstances change, if you've forgotten something, or you think there's a better way of writing something, then you can go in at any point and edit your response. Even if you submitted it, all you need to do is click a button to withdraw your submission, and that will make it available for editing again. And at that point it will change to version 2. So version 1 will be the first draft that you submit. Version 2 will be the next draft that you submit. Okay, so on the next page, so checking that you're ready to submit your response, as you can see, there's a progress bar there where it says edit response and it says mandatory. So that's a progress bar on the mandatory questions. Just need to make sure that for all relevant questionnaires that you are doing, that that the progress bar is full for each of those. If there is a questionnaire that you are not doing, you need to make sure that you click opt out, or the system will not show you the submit response button because it will think that you've forgotten to fill it in. So say for example, you're doing a tender with 2 lots. There'll be 3 questionnaires. So there'll be a selection questionnaire and then a quality questionnaire for lot 1 and a quality questionnaire for lot 2. So say you're just doing the first lot, you would need to do the selection questionnaire and the questionnaire for the lot, and then opt out of question 2, and then you'll see the submit response button. There is a sort of like by the submit response button, there is also a little traffic light checklist as well. So if it's not showing, you can check that and see which area you need to go back to and make sure you've completed. So as I said there, once you've submitted, it says submitted beneath the clock, and where the versions are listed as well. So it says version 1 submitted with a time date. It's all everything gets date stamped for auditing purposes. Right, so going on to the messaging area then, and don't worry, we're getting towards the end of the presentation now. So the messaging area is very simple. You go into it, it just says, there's just a green button that says create message. It will default the recipient to us. It will not allow you to send messages to specific or any other people. It will only allow you to send messages to me, more or less. In it, you can put the subject title, a bit of text, and also you can add attachments if necessary. So if you need to send me a screenshot, if you're having a problem with the website, you can attach a picture for me to see, and I can assist you with that. Please do not attach documents or draft versions of answers. I cannot comment on those. So when using the messaging area, it's primarily, apart from providing technical assistance as needed, it's primarily for asking clarifications. So if there is a part of the tender that you are unsure about, so for example, if you think a question has been worded ambiguously, or there are 2 sentences in the specification that say different things, and so you want to know which one of those is correct, then yes, please contact us as soon as possible through the message area and make us aware of that. You will not receive a direct response to your message. What I will do is I collect all the clarifications into a spreadsheet, and then I publish that spreadsheet as and when needed, with a complete list of all the clarifications so far. That helps make things easier for you and everybody else, because then you only need to look for the most recent clarification message from me, and in there you will have a spreadsheet that lists all messages to date. So you only need to look for the most recent one. You don't need to go trawling back through lots of messages to see all the different clarifications that there are. If you send us a clarification by email, it will not be responded to. You'll be asked to send it in through the messaging area. As I say, this website meets certain audit requirements that we need to follow by law. So we keep as much of our contact with bidders through the website as possible, with the exception of providing technical assistance over the phone. So if you are having a problem with it, if you are just having a problem using the website, as I said, we can arrange a phone call. If there is a problem with the website, so for example, it won't load, or there's an actual technical error, then that needs to be reported to Proactis. There's a help area, and you can send a message to Proactis and inform them of, say, a technical issue with the website, and their programmers will take a look and try and resolve it as quickly as possible. Right, so clarification questions. So as I said, they need to go through the messaging area. We are not allowed to reply privately. We have to publish it so that everybody has access to the same information. That's part of, transparency and fairness. And as I said, technical questions, please contact Proactis. That's the wrong bit there. So this one's just sort of like a reminder to read the ITT thoroughly. It contains the timescales and deadlines that you need to follow, the reasons for rejection and elimination, the differences between selection and award. So, to summarize now, selection is an assessment of your company's current status, and the award criteria are questions that focus on how you will deliver the contract if you're successful. So there's a slight distinction there between the two questionnaires. So the ITT will tell you how your bid will be evaluated. So it contains a copy of the weightings for each question, so you know which ones are most important. And also it contains the scoring matrix, so how we score your questions, and then of course the weighting is applied to the score to get your final scores. It will contain the specifications, so it tells you what we want from you regarding delivering the tender. And you should find that the questions match up with the specification. The pricing document will be contained within one of the questionnaires, and you need to make sure that that is completed accurately, and also that you don't make any changes to the template pricing document. When we evaluate prices, we need to make sure that we are doing it on a like-for-like basis. Otherwise, it's not possible to evaluate the prices. So if you submit a pricing document that has not been completed properly, or has been modified, so say, for example, we've asked for the price per day and you've provided the price per hour, we cannot compare a price per day with price per hour. And so, because of course we don't know how many hours would be in your day, day length varies from company to company. So you could risk having your bid rejected if that happens. So please make sure you complete the pricing document properly. If you have any questions about the pricing document, make sure you send us to those as a clarification, and we will answer those for you. We can only score you on what you provide. So just in case any of you are companies that have worked with Cambridgeshire County Council in the past, if you forget to say something in your bid, we cannot give you points for it, even if one of the evaluators knows that has worked with you in the past and knows that it's something that you can offer. They cannot score you for it. It must be in writing. So don't make the mistake of assuming that because you've worked with the council in the past that you don't need to you know, put 100% effort into writing the bid because, oh, you know, we're friends or whatever, and they know we can do it, so we don't need to go into great detail. You are still required to go into as much detail as needed in each of the questions in order to evidence that you meet the criteria that we've set out. Terms and conditions as well are provided in the ITT, so you'll need to read those thoroughly. Obviously ask us if you've got any questions about those, but terms and conditions tend not to be that flexible. And you'll be and so that you can make sure that your company is happy to operate within those terms and conditions. All right, is that the last slide? Oh, that's the penultimate slide. So I can provide you with these contact details. So that's for technical queries. That's the contact details for Proactis. As I say, if you can't log into the website or something, you know, if it won't load or it won't, or keeps rejecting attachments or won't save, technical issues of that type, they can go to this email address or that phone number. Thank you very much for listening. Does anybody have any questions about anything that I've said? Mark. Okay. Yeah, I think I can hear you, Mark.
When is the tender going to be published? You know?
When is the tender going to be published? Bear with me a second. I just got to get my notes up.
I thought it was 16th of August, David, but I might have got that wrong.
It's Ralph said 16th of August earlier, and that's the date that I have in my notes. So should be 16th of August.
Many thanks.
Okay. I saw another question pop up and it's disappeared. Bear with me a second.
Yeah, one provider says, I'm already registered with Proactis, however, I am unable to locate a tender for providing semi-independent. Yeah, we haven't published it yet, so that would be why.
Okay, and oh, contact details for me. My contact details will be on the tender. So it will say David Isaacs and give an email address and everything. But as I say, I can only if you contact me through via email, it's or phone, it's only going to be for very specific circumstances. For example, if you need me to help talk you through using a website, I won't be able to answer clarification questions or give you advice on completing the tender.
It's Jane here. I just wanted to say, are you having any open framework at the minute?
Well, this is an open framework, in that it's a framework that is opened, I think, roughly on an annual basis.
Does that answer your question, Jane? I think you'll have mine and Sam's details as well as David's, so we are happy. I'm conscious of time. Certainly, Sam and I are happy to take emails.
That's okay.
Great. David, thank you ever so much for making time for that.
All right, you're welcome. Yeah, and look forward to doing it again this afternoon. Got to do. Lovely. All right. I think does that wrap up the session now then, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's the end of the, I was going to say the morning. We've just strayed slightly into the afternoon. So thank you everybody for bearing with us. It's always a bit of a challenge doing so with Teams. There is a feedback form which Rachel's kindly circulating again. We would really appreciate your feedback, because obviously if we're wasting your time, that's no good to you and it's no good to us. So please do let us know what went well, what we could do better. We do look forward to building our relationship with you guys. I think you know from what we've set out our priorities. Happy to have conversations. Similarly to what David said, there were some things I'm happy to share with everybody, because obviously I want to build the whole market. Given that we're 21 minutes overrun, unless there's anything urgent, I'm going to suggest we call it a day here. But as I say, you should have contact details, so please do let us know if there's anything to follow up. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming, and I'm sure we'll speak again.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Right. Thanks, David.